Hello, welcome to Life Group. This week we're working through Exodus, chapters 11 through 17, but specifically focusing on chapters 14 through 17. There are 5 passages that I want to draw your attention to regarding our topic today of complainers, or the NIV would say grumblers or grumbling. And so as we look at this, the look section, maybe you identify as a person half full, seeing the glass half full, or a person seeing the glass half empty. And I hope you weren't surprised by any inputs that you might have received from family members or friends. I know that can certainly happen. Let's look at Exodus 14. Now here is the deal. It is day 1. The Exodus has just occurred. They have not crossed the Red Sea as of yet, the Sea of Reeds. Pharaoh is pursuing. We're talking day 1 of the deliverance. Now after all these 10 plagues and the magnificent showing of the power of God, here we are in chapter 14, verse 12. This is what they say to Moses. Didn't we say to you in Egypt, leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert. The desert is this place of transition into deliverance. Serving the Egyptians was bondage and pain and hurt and work, slavery. We could probably take a whole lesson and look at the applications between those two. How we would often rather be in slavery than have to walk through this transition place. Now, we love the deliverance, but the transition place, it was day 1. We're not talking a year later, 3 years later, that we've forgotten. It was day 1. And they're already complaining. In chapter 15, verse 24, they had just sung the song, waters crash on the Egyptians, they're delivered, Egyptian bodies are floating on shore, and Miriam takes her tambourine and starts to worship and praise it. Chapter 15, almost in its entirety, is this song. And then, verse 24, they were on a 3-day journey. Now we're at day 3. 3 days they traveled in the desert without finding water. When they came to Marah, they could not drink the water. It was bitter. So 24, here we go. So the people grumbled against Moses, saying, what are we to drink? Now that's only 3 days after the Red Sea. I'm starting to connect with this. Now let's look in 16. We might as well just keep clipping along. Chapter 16, verses 2 and 3. It says, actually verse 1 says, on the 15th day of the 2nd month. Now, Passover restructured the Jewish calendar. Passover became New Year's Day. Passover became the first day of the first month. And then you had the Feast of Unleavened Bread for those 7 days. So that first month was started by this Passover angel in the Exodus. And that's how their year would start. So when they say that they are in the 15th day of the 2nd month, we are talking 6 weeks later. 6 weeks later. Okay, water's bitter. They grumble and complain. Moses tosses a piece of wood into the water, and the waters become sweet. Miracle. Not enough. 6 weeks later, in the desert, verse 2, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, if only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you have brought us out into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death. It's amazing. We can believe God for deliverance in some areas and can't believe Him for deliverance in others. Sometimes it's easier for us to believe God for a deliverance from a cancer than it is for Him to pay our bill, help us financially, or something like that. Very interesting here. And they're looking back at Egypt and they're remembering, oh, we just sat, it sounds like a party. We just, like a festival, post-wedding celebration. We just sat around and ate all that we could eat. They forgot they had to go find their own straw, and they were beaten, and they forgot all that, I guess. I think we do. I think we do. Let's move along. That's only 6 weeks later. Then we go down into verse 7 and 8, and Moses gives us a little bit of some insight here. Chapter 16, verse 7. In the morning you'll see the glory of the Lord because He has heard your grumbling against Him. That's something to note. God does hear our complaining. You're grumbling against him. Who are we that you should grumble against us? Moses is saying. Who are we? Moses also said, you will know that it was the Lord when he gives you meat to eat in the evening and all the bread you want in the morning, because he's heard your grumbling against him. Who are we? He asks again. You're not grumbling against us, but against the Lord. Now my question would be this. When we have these times of grumbling, are we grumbling against the situation? Are we complaining about the predicament? Now as a Christian, are we complaining about the predicament and the situation, or are we complaining about God and complaining against him? Maybe that's a rhetorical question. Moses seems to nail it here. You're not grumbling against us, but against the Lord. And finally, again, another water situation in chapter 17. Chapter 17, verse 7. This time they didn't have any water, and Moses took his rod and struck the rock. He called the place Massah and Meribah because the Israelites quarreled and because they tested the Lord, saying, again, they were like, where's the water? What is the problem? What is the deal here? This is what he said. They tested the Lord, saying, is the Lord among us or not? Now that captured something for me. Is the Lord among us or not? Again, it is a question of God's presence. Sometimes our grumbling and sometimes our depressions and sometimes our complaining is very much about, oh, I just think God's left me. I think God's not here. I think God was able to do the plagues. I think God was able to deliver us through the Red Sea. I think God was able to provide water the first time. I'm feeling God in this. I think God was able to feed us. I think God, but this second time, I don't know. What is that about us? Now, as you move into this final section, the took section, and you read through here, I want you to realize that as far as I could tell, it's only been 2 months from the Passover and the Exodus and the cloud and the angel and the crossing and the tambourine on the shore and all the praise and adoration to God. It's only been really less than 2 months. Here's my question. Is it simply human nature that determines our proclivity or our inclination to forget and complain? I don't know. I'd like you to take up that third section of your Lookbook Took worksheet and give that some conversation. Pray the Lord would help us all. We all find ourselves in these places where we know God has delivered, and we have experience with that. And we also experience this other part, this other seeming dichotomy of our nature that pulls us away and drops us into a default setting almost of complaining, disputing, grumbling. I pray the Lord helps you today as you pray together at the end of this meeting, that the Spirit of God would cover you, give you insight and wisdom, and that His Spirit would be a helper. I bless you with grace and peace. I love you.